There has never been a democracy in this world that has not committed suicide or imploded on itself. Sri Lanka finds itself currently in a similar predicament because all the issues that we're facing today, at the end of the day, when it comes to the breakdown of the law and order in the society or the incidents that unfold in Sri Lanka these days, we must remember that the people are, in the end, the ones who exercise their sovereignty at an election and elect the leaders who would govern us for a certain period of time. So in this never-ending cycle of democracy, we are at yet another stage. And to discuss the situation in the country and much more, we've got with us the leader of the Lanka Samasamaja Party, parliamentarian Professor Tissa Vitarana. A very good evening, Professor, and welcome to the show.
Good evening. Thank you for asking me.
Definitely, Professor. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation during these extremely troubled times. Professor, let's start off with the most pressing issue that people have these days. The new cabinet has been appointed, Professor. A new president has come into power. Judging by your political acumen and political perspective, do you think that the people will at least get some reprieve out of this change in government?
I'm afraid I'm skeptical. I do not see that the people who have now come into power, like many who were in power before them, have a proper understanding of the situation that the people are facing. For instance, just to give you figures which I received from the Medical Research Institute where I worked earlier, nearly below 80, close to 80% of our people are below the poverty line, which means they don't have adequate funds for their living purposes. Over 20%, I think around 21, 22%, are having malnutrition. And this has been increasing steeply. The last time I think I appeared on a show like this, it was around 18%, and not less than a year ago it was 14.3%. So which is a very bad sign.
Professor, many of these issues that you're speaking of, this malnutrition, extreme poverty, a lot of them are part of the crises that Sri Lankans are facing these days. They are man-made. If anyone tells you otherwise, would you believe them? These are man-made issues, right? Because there are still people who believe that these are due to external factors, maybe the war in Russia and Ukraine.
No, not
But in the end, we ourselves, or the leaders who acted on our behalf, were the people who put our food security in jeopardy, who brought us to a position where we can't even grow the food that we need to eat 3 meals a day. Professor, but now you are a representative of the people, you are a leader of the people, you are a member of parliament. Professor, especially speaking about the attack on the protest site opposite Galface, we didn't see your party coming out, the Lanka Samasamaja Party, a party always with the people, coming out and issuing a statement. What's your position on this entire debacle?
Well, I mean, people have a right to protest as in any democracy, so long as it is peaceful. And they must be allowed to express their grievances publicly. And I think it's the duty of any government to meet the leaders of the protesters and find out what their problems are, why they are protesting, and take necessary corrective action. Well, I think that should have been done a long time ago. It has been now mounting up to the point where they said, go home, right? That is referring to the president himself. and Ranil go home. Now, there was as a result of the hardships that the people are encountering, we have massive inflation. Together with that, we have a situation where the economy is actually shrinking, and there are job losses, there are people getting even reduced incomes. So in this situation, people are facing a very difficult situation, which any political leaders with a conscience should be aware of this situation, interact with the people, find out what these grievances are, and take corrective action in time.
But Professor, you didn't really answer my question. My question was, what is the stance of the Lanka Sama Samaja Party regarding the attack on the protest site yesterday, very specifically?
We are totally opposed to that. We deploy it, and you see, the point is this: people have a right to peaceful protest, and so long as they do that, that should be allowed. And also the people who are governing should respond to their grievances. Now, none of that has occurred, and here I think in the late hours, early hours of the morning,
at about 1:30,
1:30 or something like that, there is shall we say a very uncalled for attack without any reason or provocation on people who were maybe in the presidential secretariat, and I was made to understand that they had been told to vacate some time ago, and then they had agreed to do so today.
In the afternoon today?
In the afternoon today. So, after waiting for a week or more, and when there is a positive response, I think this type of action is not only, shall I say, unfair, it's provocative.
Professor Tisavitaran, I think I speak on behalf of all Sri Lankans when I say that we are tired, mentally, physically, and tired of things that are happening around us. And since the appointment of the new president, although there was a section in society who was strongly against it, there was a growing opinion among the people that despite what has happened, although it is not in the absolute best interest of the people should take a step back and allow the new president and his new cabinet to function for a certain period of time, after which the people can be given the opportunity to select their own leaders at an election. But however, this incident was unexpected. It was done in the shade of darkness. People did not prepare for this. After this incident happened, do you think that the new presidency of Ranil Wickremesinghe and his government could maybe bounce back and win the trust of the people?
Certainly not. You see, in this whole process, where there was, say, a certain measure of understanding that there would be, as it were, a period, intermediate period, during which the things will be worked towards a situation of normalcy, and that elections would follow thereafter, where the people could choose the government that they would like to be run by. Now, having all that in mind, to undertake the type of attack that was done suddenly without any provocation is, I think, breakdown of the type of understanding that was being built up, and so the people as a result will lose trust in this government, and any agreement or any solution to the problems depends on mutual trust, and if that is not there, the people will, to put it very boldly, take to the street.
Professor Tesavitarana, we are in a desperate situation as a country, and looking at the track record of our leaders, they've not had too much of a good track record, starting from the very top office in the executive to maybe even down low. But Sri Lankans have been peaceful in their protest for a certain period of time, and it's only whenever they are provoked. For example, the incident on the 9th of May, when they were attacked, was what really agitated the situation, and according to Newton's third law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. However, people should be mindful to remain peaceful as much as possible, but all of these, but the point I'm trying to make really is that the government keeps on saying, you know, be peaceful, be peaceful, be peaceful, but goes and provokes protesters who are simply on the street because, not because they are demanding for higher pays, not because they are demanding for jobs, they are simply demanding for the food on their table, the basic essentials, the very, very least that people need to live. So when this is the strategy, this was the strategy, this had been the strategy of the previous government, 24 hours since the new president took oaths, do you think this is the strategy of the new government as well?
I have a very, shall I say, skeptical view of what is has happened during this 24 hours, as you say, and about the immediate future, because the attitude is one of not reaching a consensus, reaching an understanding, or through a process of discussion and exchange of views, but the attitude that we govern, we have to be obeyed, and
strong-arming the people.
Strong-arming the people.
Professor, we've got a message from one of our viewers, a question for you. The question goes, knowing that his government was responsible for, or the previous government was responsible for the diabolical situation that the people are in right now, and also knowing that the people wanted all the main leaders of the previous government, including Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, to go, why then did the most sovereign body of Sri Lanka, the parliament, which you two are a member of, vote against the interest of the people yesterday? Or the day before yesterday?
I voted for, I didn't vote for Ranil Wickremesinghe, I can assure you on that. And I voted for Dallas, who was unfortunately defeated, because he is closer to the people and more responsive to their demands and their needs, and someone who is, I would say, center or center-left in his politics, who would have responded, shall I say, in a more people-friendly way in this situation, which is what is needed. And to win the confidence once again of the people in the government, you need that type of approach. But I'm afraid that's not the type of approach that seems to be practiced, certainly not in the last 24 hours.
Professor Tissavitharana, the people are also wondering as to how did this vote swing. There were allegations raised that money was being thrown around, but are these allegations really true? We'll find out the answers to these questions after a short commercial break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Newsline live.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
What happened at the Occupy Goldface protest site? Attacks on journalists. International community responds to attack on peaceful protesters. New Prime Minister appointed. Are the new ministers temporary? Sarath Fonseca's decision.
මමත් පුද්ගලිකව හිතාගෙන හිටියා හරි වැඩක් කරනවා නම් රටේ අවබෝධයක් තියෙන අවස්ථාවක මේ ජනාධිපති සමග යම්කිසි දෙයකට කැපකිරීමක් කරන්න.
Newsfirst, Newsline.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsline Live. We're in discussion with Professor Tissavitharana, a parliamentarian and the leader of the Lanka Samaja Party. Professor Tissavitharana, your party was a constituent party of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Just to clarify, are you still a part of the alliance,
No.
or you've stepped out?
We stepped out.
I believe also our host on TV1 on our show Face the Nation, Shamil Russell-Dean, was questioning you quite aggressively on many of these shows, asking when you will resign. But today you finally have moved away from the alliance.
No, in the sense that usually we are now seated in the
Opposition, right.
And we formed an independent group. There were initially 41 people,
Okay.
members of parliament, who broke away from the government. And
But where did those 41 members vote yesterday? Did they vote with the Sri
don't
Lanka
ask me,
Podujana
don't
Peramuna?
ask me, because you mentioned money, and I think money has played a role in this.
Were you offered anything, Professor?
No, I wasn't personally. I think people would know that I'm not going to be bought under any circumstances.
Did anyone you know maybe get an offer of certain
No,
sum?
certainly not at first hand. I did. I mean, time is short. We've not really had much time to meet each other. But I was informed by that is second-hand news that a person had been offered. And
Professor, if you don't mind me asking, these are unconfirmed reports, of course, but how much?
I don't know. I don't know that one.
What's the selling price of a parliamentarian these days?
I don't know. You know, it's for instance, when you look at it this way, to fight a presidential election and become the president of the country is a very expensive exercise.
It's cheaper this way.
It's very much cheaper this way. You get hold of the necessary numbers and give them a substantial amount, and yet the total cost will be way below the cost of an election campaign.
But Professor, the fact that we are sitting here and discussing these matters and having a kind of a laugh about it is sad, Professor, because this goes to show that the electoral laws in Sri Lanka, or the election campaign financing laws in Sri Lanka, are also not adequate. And the sad part is, Professor, that it's these same parliamentarians who are accepting these bribes, let's call them what they are, bribes, and soliciting these bribes that we expect to formulate laws to maybe curb this. Do you think they'll do that?
Well, as you know, for instance, the earlier times when we had electorates, right, there used to be, it was necessary for every candidate to submit their expense statement. And there was a limit placed on the amount that could be spent
on a campaign,
on the election campaign. And there were in fact several election petitions which were heard in courts against people who had exceeded that limit. So there was, shall we say, both a mental climate as well as physical conditions imposed which militated against excessive expenditure. And people went beyond that. I mean, especially the parties like that of say the UNP, which represents the interests of the capitalist class in this country and the rich people. They went beyond this because there are various roundabout ways of influencing the people financially, which don't come in the public horizon, you see. And there are various other ways of influencing people.
Maybe sweeping a few of their cases under the carpet.
So all those operate, but at least there was a awareness that you had to try to restrict the amount that you spend. But now there's absolutely, shall we say, no thinking on those lines
at all.
And people are just spending as much as they can, and those who have will be the winners. The have-nots will not be the winners like our party.
Professor Thissa Vitarana, as the Lanka Samasamaja party and as a member of parliament, do you believe that you've done enough to maybe rectify the situation in the country?
It's very difficult as one person to do that.
But Professor Ranil Wickramasinghe had only one seat in parliament. He's now the president.
Yeah, but he had the, shall we say, the links with those who have the money as well as those who have the power. So I don't.
Yesterday there was this whole discussion after the new president's visit to the Gangarame temple where a foreign journalist questioned him and asked him, are you a friend of the Rajapaksas? And he said that people are asking for change, but since you're a friend of the Rajapaksas, how can you bring change? The president quite eloquently responded to this question saying, I'm not a friend of the Rajapaksas, I'm a friend of the people. See your take on this, Professor.
I wish what he said was correct and was going to be implemented, but I doubt it. He is really coming from a certain class of society. He has I've known him for a long time. He actually happens to be a relation of my late wife, and we used to be on opposite houses down 5th Lane, Kolapitiya, and meet quite often. But though there is no personal animosity, where political matters are concerned, I'm afraid I'm on the side of the people, and I feel that he is not on the side of the people. He's on the side of those who are exploiting the people and getting richer and richer, while the people are getting poorer and poorer. And in Sri Lanka today, you ask any economist, the gap between the rich and the poor is widening. And the level of poverty, as I mentioned at the outset of our discussion, is appalling. And really nothing substantial is being done by the government to rectify that situation. For instance, wherever I got the opportunity, even in Parliament, I mentioned the need for the revival and strengthening of the cooperative movement to ensure that both producer cooperatives as well as consumer cooperatives are directly interlinked, so that you do away with the profiteering middlemen who are now exploiting the situation. Prices are going sky high. The government itself publicly says make sure that you supply the food, etc., that the people need, and you can charge whatever you want. They say it quite boldly. I would like to
Professor Desavitarana, you've been on this show a number of times and you've made certain predictions that have come true. For instance, when the chemical fertilizer ban was imposed, you came on this show and you said Sri Lanka will go into a famine. This unfounded policy that's not based on science will be reversed eventually, and we will go back and the situation will be bad, and that's exactly where we are today. So your predictions are taken quite seriously by the people, and because of that very reason, it's the final few minutes of the show. Might I ask you, Professor, against a backdrop where there is a new government in power, and they have, within 24 hours of the new government coming into power, and just before the cabinet was sworn in, gone and attacked one of the main protest sites of the people, and thereby tarnished to a certain degree their image before the people. The people are now demanding, or continuing to demand, a change in the government. What will happen next?
All I can say is that it'll explode at some point in time. People will tolerate so long as they feel that there is some hope of change down the line in a positive direction. But the way in which this government has started, the way in which the people are being treated generally, and issues not taken seriously, is going to lead to a complete loss of confidence. There will be there are a lot of hungry people in this country, and there is a limit to that, and there will be a time when there will be an explosive situation which will disrupt our society. I'm not
advocating for it.
Advocating that, but I'm saying that is the way we are heading for if we persist with these wrong policies. We must now completely change this situation. That's why, for instance, our 10-party alliance of political parties suggested an interim government period during which the basic issues
of the people will be sorted.
Would be attended to, focused on, and then we go for election where the people can
choose their leaders.
Professor
Desavitarana, this wouldn't be the first time that governments in power have not heeded to the logical advice that your party, you and many others in the society have given them. But of course, like you said, Professor, things look grim, but we only hope and pray that hope will come back into the lives, into the houses of all Sri Lankans, and that we will be able to persist through this, through these trying times. Thank you very much once again, Professor Desavitarana, for coming on our show. Thank you very much to all our viewers for tuning in, and always remember the things that are happening these days, because we as Sri Lankans generally tend to forget come an election, and we vote based on our feelings, we vote based on communal lines, based on religious lines. But remember how your leaders treated you today, and please make sure that you return them the favor at an election. Take care and God bless.
Thank you.